Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical like mine, or it can be psychological. You put your mind to. And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose. What seems impossible can be done by you. He's a former NFL player, a consultant. He's a speaker. He ignites and inspires people to embrace their own greatness. It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you. He's written a book called Dig. Discover your depth, determination, and destiny through adversity. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose. Get your pen and paper out. Yeah. I'm taking notes. Paralysis to purpose. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, like, and share this podcast with someone. That helps not only me, but it'll help you and the person that you share it with. I'm really excited about today's podcast. I always say this because I get to speak with some of the most intriguing and inspiring people on the planet. And today I'm getting a double dip of sorts. Our guest today was one of our first guests on our podcast back in 2020. And the name of the podcast was Dead at 16. Well, obviously he wasn't dead because we talked to him. And he's back. He's written a book called Dig. It says, discover your depth, determination, and destiny through adversity. What does it mean to dig deep? Digging deep refers to your ability to look inside yourself, see your potential, and use all you have to reach your goals, live out your values, and overcome obstacles. It refers to your resiliency, your ability to bounce back after setbacks. Thomas R. Williams. He's an author. He's a former NFL player, a consultant. He's a speaker. He ignites and inspires people to embrace their own greatness. He's a husband and a father. We were talking before we got online about what a joy it is to be a dad and the responsibility of leadership that comes with being a husband and a father. I'm so excited to have him back on the podcast. I told my producer, Bill, I said, man, we got Thomas R. Williams coming back. It was one of our goals is to have people who we've talked to in the past come back. And you're the first one, the first of many, I believe. Great to see you, man, and have you on the podcast.
D Cooks, what's up, brother? Man, it's good to see you too. As you're talking about that, it reminds me of one of my childhood movies, Back to the Future. So we started back, and now we're getting ready to climb all the way to the future and be in this moment, man. So I'm happy to be back on the podcast. It's good to see your face, man, hear your voice and see you smile.
Likewise. Let's get right into your book. Obviously, you've been doing some things since we last spoke. It was in 2020 we last spoke. You've relocated, you've gotten married, you've got children. Tell our audience for a little bit about what you've been up to these last couple of years, and then we'll dig deep.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. It's funny. I will sum up an experience that I had with our oldest daughter this morning, where she's in a bossy phase. And so I'm a girl dad, so I'm a ladies' man officially. There's 3 women in my house, and then there's me. We got a son on the way, so I'll have to throw out my girl dad shirt and hat here shortly. But yeah, my daughter this morning, she's like, I want to take mommy's car. And I said, no, we're taking daddy's car. She said, well, at least if we're not going to take mommy's car, let's go through the garage. And I said, you know what? You're going to stop bossing me around. I'm an adult. And she looked at me like, yeah, whatever you say, but you're going to follow me to this garage. And so D Cooks, man, I'm in the business right now of pleasing not only the clients and the audiences that I'm instructed to support as well as impact, but I'm in the business of pleasing the family, man. One of the things that I'm really, really passionate about right now, man, is responsibility over feelings. There's not too many times I feel like doing what I'm supposed to do at home, but that's my responsibility. And so with that understanding that convenience kills discipline. Mm-hmm. And so, man, everything in my life right now is about discipline, and it's about responsibility.
Let's talk about that just for a moment. I think that personal responsibility can negate a whole lot of bad decisions if we hold ourselves accountable. Can you just And I know we're going to talk about the book, but, started on this accountability, responsibility thing. Talk about that a little bit.
See, accountability first comes with oneself. And so with accountability, it's funny because I was talking with a client in a group recently, and they don't have a definition for accountability. And ultimately, accountability is doing what I told you I would do. That's accountability. This is what I can expect from you. This is what you should expect from me. So if I tell you I'm going to be there or do this at a specific time, I'm going to be there. I'm going to do that. Now, there's certain circumstances and things come up, but it's my job and it's my responsibility to make sure I communicate that, because the last time we talked, you were expecting me to do something in particular. So that's the accountability piece. I think transitioning into the responsibility piece, and I've seen it. I grew up without my father in my life. And so unfulfilled expectations were a norm for me. And that's a generational curse that I've decided that I'm going to break. That wifey and I talk about it all the time. This is what you said you're going to do, and you didn't do it. And that's not what I'm trying to build. That's not what I'm trying for my family to look and see me as. And so what I look at, D, is from a responsibility aspect, is doing the things that are under your tutelage in your leadership. There's things in my responsibility, like my family, waking up, providing, leading, protecting. I don't have to feel any kind of way to do those three things, because God gave me clear and concise purpose and message when he said, I give this to you, and this is what I want you to do. And I learned that when you go and you live based off of responsibility as opposed to feelings, then there's never a time where your feeling is going to interrupt your responsibility. Because so many times we do feel like, should I go work out? I don't know. Maybe I should work out a little bit later because then I can get this done. Or, should I eat this? Or should I take this class? Or should I go talk to these people? That's leaving it for an opportunity for you to miss your responsibility because you're led by feelings. For example, people always ask the question of, are you happy? And happy is a feeling. Happiness is a feeling, and that is fleeting. And sometimes our happiness or our sadness can interrupt what our responsibility is. And so if we allow our happiness or sadness to interrupt or to dissolve anything that we're responsible for doing, then we miss that moment of opportunity. It's just like right now, if you set on a path to do something, and if you say, okay, God, this is what I want to do. And God goes, okay, great. I've laid out the path for you to get there. But let's say it's going to take 10 steps in order for that to come to full fruition. And now on step 4, you're like, God, I don't really feel like doing this anymore. Now we're going to ask him to transition or to change the trajectory of where we want to go. But it's unfortunate because the only thing we had to do is keep going, and God would have continued to lay out that path, and eventually we would have got to step 10. But so many times we go, I don't feel like doing it anymore, or there's something else that's going to come up. But that's where the accountability comes in. This is what you said you wanted. The accountability is, I'm going to do everything that it takes in order to get what I said I wanted.
Right.
But right now, there's so many people that don't necessarily want to stay on the course to get what they ultimately want. And because they don't stay on the course, then they never get there. And they say that the course, the path, the trajectory, it wasn't accurate because I didn't get there. But the only thing you have to do is be accountable. Just like we said at the very beginning, be accountable to what you said. That's when you have tremendous amount of breakthroughs. There's certain things that I wouldn't have even fathomed doing several years ago, like being able to operate off 5 hours of sleep. But because my responsibilities to my family, it's easy now to operate off of 5 hours of sleep because that got me into training for doing this. It's not about what I do based off of my feelings. It's about what I do based off of my responsibilities. And now, because there's listeners out there who will say, okay, well, Thomas, it sounds like you do it all right all the time. Nope. Let me give you that example. So just 4th of July, a couple of weeks ago, family was going up to Montana for 5 days. I said, I got 3 days in me, D Cooks. I'm not 5 days. You guys can go up there for 5. I'm going for 3. Taylor sits me down and says, listen, our kids are getting to the ages where they're going to start asking, where's dad? Where's dad? Why is dad not here? And then what you're also painting the picture is that it's okay to not engage in all of family activities because of feelings. The reason why I wasn't going to go for 5 days is because I didn't feel like it. But because my responsibility is to be there, lead, protect, provide, in a foreign place like Montana, then it is my responsibility to be there for its entirety. And Taylor said, we're going to take family pictures and dad's not going to be in some of those pictures. And then you're going to have to answer the question. And it might be 1 trip, 2 trips, 5 trips. But again, Thomas, you're accountable to us, just like we're accountable to you. And so it is your responsibility to be there for 5 days. Nonetheless, D Cooks, I was there for all 5 days because I was voluntold. But after going there for those 5 days, man, I had the best trip. And I'm so glad that I was held accountable to the standard of our family.
I know you know about building teams and everything. We always think of horizontal accountability, but there's vertical accountability that comes into play, so that there's an accountability one to another on an equal level. And then there's accountability on a submissive level, to someone higher than you. If you do it right, it doesn't allow for you to make decisions based on emotion. Like you said, after the fact, you were glad that you went. Yeah. And you had all the reason in your mind not to go for the duration. But yes, I know you were glad for that accountability piece. And accountability gets you to your end.
Yeah.
It provides the nurturing that you need to get there. So anyway, that's bonus. I should have a bonus subscription for the listeners for these kind of things. We're going to talk about your book. So let's get into your book. Let's talk about writing this book. I write about my own lived experiences. And when I got this book, because your other 2 books were about you and your experiences, when I got this one, this was a different kind of book for me, because it wasn't about you. It was about a kid named Darren and his family. And where did you get the idea from, and how did the creativity to do this come about?
Man, it's a saying of learn from the mistakes of others because you can't make them all yourself. And when I hear that quote, it reminds me of the importance of mentorship. And mentorship is so important. And so, as you know, one of my close mentors, close friends, confidants, and people I work with is Jon Gordon. And so I met Jon a couple years ago. And Jon first told me, he said, man, you got to write a story about something that relates to everybody. And when you write a story, a fable, everybody can take something from that. And so I was a little apprehensive. And then this book came into my soul, into my spirit in Q1 of 2020. I was making my bed one day and God said, I need you to have the depth that I've created you for. And I was like, cool. How are you going to give me that wisdom and knowledge? And God said, well, I'm going to take you deep. And that's how I came up with the title of Dig. And Dig is just diving into your own greatness. David, to be honest with you, before I created this story, I was just tired of seeing drug dealers, divorce, domestic violence, in the family dynamics about hardships, single parents, whether it was mom, dad. I wanted to create a positive conflict, which would had a dynamic adversity, which would then entail an incredible outcome. And so I said, why don't we take somebody who came from the picture perfect situation, let's put them in a less perfect situation from the outside looking in, and let's give him purpose. Let's give him determination, perseverance, and create one heck of a storyline inside of that positive conflict. Because everything that's negative doesn't necessarily have to be crazy. It could be positive conflict. And so that's what Darren had. He had a positive conflict. And so I teamed up with my friends at Streamline, who helped me write the book, storyline, develop it. And man, we just went to work. And so just like we were talking about a little bit before the story, what this gave me the opportunity, because somebody was writing it from conversations we had. God gave me the ability to speak. He didn't give me the ability to write. And so I spoke this vision. I spoke the story into existence. And then the team over at Streamline, they went to work for it for a week. And then throughout that week, instead of me focus on writing the book, getting in the weeds, I was able to be at 30,000 feet the entire time, so that I could look down on the project and I could say, this is a tweak that we need to make. This is an adjustment that we need to, we need to go back here. We need to add this in here. And so I didn't worry about writing the story. I was able to focus on creating it. And so, man, that just gave me some of the greatest ability to have fun, because as we know, right, raising a family, being a part of a family, running a business in the middle of transitioning from one state to the next, there was a lot of demand, and I didn't want to miss opportunities being present at home because I was so focused on writing this story.
When you said that you understood what the gift was that you had and what you were not gifted to do, that really makes it a lot easier to go down the path that you're supposed to go. And therefore you had, a team to help you. We talk about perspective, perseverance, and partnerships. We still talk about that on the podcast from the time we talked to you about that back then to now. And it always holds true that these three things, how you see things, how much you work at it, and who helps you out, are always essential to success.
Yeah.
Whether it's writing a book or doing something else. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we want to get into the storyline of this book, because it's a really great book. There's basketball involved in it. And, I'm a basketball guy. We're going to talk about Darren and his family and moving from one place to the next and what that meant psychologically, financially, relationship-wise. There's so many things in this book that I think is going to help us out. So, hey, we'll be right back after this short break.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and we've got Thomas R. Williams with us today. And we're going to get right into his book now. It's called Dig. I want you to go and get his book. It's available everywhere, and it's about family. It's about athletics. It's about relationships. It's about teamwork. And to me, it was about also not falling prey to the stereotypes when you come into a situation that looks much different than what you are accustomed to. So maybe we start with that. Let's talk about the transition for Darren and his family from the other side of the tracks.
Yeah. So, one of the things that, first time coming on the podcast, dead at 16, I've lived that plus 22 years, coming up on 23 years. And one of the things that I've really understood is that so many times in life, when we get what we want taken away, it's only because it's going to be replaced by what we need. And the same thing in the book, it was Darren who, like you talked about, his family moves from one side of town to the next. And what you think about when you think about comfort, you think about where everything is. And then on top of that, he's going into his senior year. And so when he goes into his senior year, this is like having senioritis. This is your friends. You guys have been dreaming about this days since you were in elementary school. We're gonna, drive to school. We're gonna, go to homecoming dance, the prom, and you got all of these things set up. And then finally, that's just snatched up from underneath you. And the thing about it is that anytime we go from one convenience to one uncomfortable, we're going to find out 4 different things. And this is the principles in the book. The first and foremost is that in order to get to the place that you want to go or anything that you want to accomplish, first and foremost, you have to identify if you're being prevented or if you're being pushed. And so many times we look at things as a stop sign when it's actually a green light telling us to go. The next thing we have to find out is if we don't have the example of something, how to do it, how to get there, and how to accomplish it, we need to find the proof that it can actually be done based off of somebody coming from our situation and circumstance. And what am I saying by that is that, and so up until 1954, everybody thought the 4-minute mile was physically impossible. Until Robert Bannister comes along and he breaks that 4-minute mark and he runs the mile in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. And in that same year, 30 people broke the 4-minute mile. So the question that people ask is that what, all of a sudden people got stronger, faster, like win resistance? No, it was that they found the proof even though before there was no example. And so I found the proof because I didn't have an example in several things. Being a father, my dad wasn't in my life early on. And so I don't have the example, which could be an excuse. But I've been able to find the proof of other dads who were there with their families, for their families, hanging out with their kids, date nights with their wives and partners, and all of these other things. So I just copy those things, David, and I utilize that as the proof. Thirdly, is that in the quitting moments, there's magic and miracles in those moments of quitting. I could talk about the time when I was in college in my freshman year. I wanted to quit. I was like, Mom, I got to come home. And I thought because I was her only child, I was her baby, I was her favorite. I thought she was going to let me do it. But she says, Thomas, if you quit at this, you'll quit for the rest of your life. Not even 6 months later, I met one of the biggest mentors and driving forces in my life, Ken Norton Jr., my coach in college. If I would have quit in that moment and gone to a more comfortable situation, I would have never met him. I would have never gotten the experiences. See, this is what I'm talking about. I thought what I wanted was to play, but what I needed was a mentor who spoke life into me. He's still giving me same life principles and mentoring me to the same day. Or the time when I wanted to quit playing in the NFL, it was right before my 4th year. I was going to quit this time of year in July, training camp. Call my dad. Dad, I want to quit football. He said, well, how long did you put your name on the list for? How long did you sign up for? I said, Dad, I signed up for 4 years. He said, what year is this? I said, the 4th year. He said, you're not able to quit until this year is over. One of the things is that in those quitting moments, greatness and magic happens. David, 3 weeks later, 2 people who were in front of me, I was third string, 2 people in front of me went down back-to-back weeks. And then that 4th week, I made a start. If I would have quit, I would have never made that start. And so fourthly, what this book ultimately comes down to, you got to run towards the roar. And see, one of the things about an old African proverb, maybe we all haven't heard, but some of us have heard and some of us haven't, is that when you have let's call it gazelles that are at the water hole and they're bathing and they're drinking. What the lions do is that they put the loudest roaring lion on one side of those gazelles. And that job of that lion is to roar as loud as possible. That lion can't run. That lion's not athletic. That lion doesn't have a superpower that it can just look at a gazelle and it can just strike it down and it will just fall down and he can eat it. But the smart lions have the other athletic, fast, talented, hungry lionesses on that other side. And so when this loud lion roars, the gazelles run in the complete opposite direction, straight into the teeth of those hungry lionesses. And so if the gazelles would have just ran towards that roar, the fear, but they allowed their feelings, not the responsibility of life, not the responsibility of perseverance, not the responsibility of moving and pushing forward, but of fear. That feeling. That's what gets them ultimately killed. And so those are the 4 principles that all come from Dig. So whether you start on the first page, on the 50th page, or on the last page, you're going to get one of those 4 principles that are all throughout. Because in order to get to your greatness, you got to dive through it.
I had written down run toward the roar, which is a constant statement throughout the book. It was interesting as you read the book. It was something that Darren's father had told him, but Darren's coach had told him that same thing when he was a player. And so there's this thing about passing down positivity and passing down tradition. One of the things that stood out to me in this book was the importance of community. Darren and his family moved from a college prep situation, paying tuition, they lose their job and they move. And they don't know anyone, but there was such a sense of community within the people. I know you were intentional in putting that in this book. There were people that Darren met that sold into him all the time. It was over and over again to make him comfortable and get past some of his fear. He was going to quit. You're a senior in high school. You were a good basketball player on the other squad. Now everything is uprooted. What do? It's hard here. There's some good players here. But he met people in the barbershop and at other places that embraced him. Can you just talk about why it's so important to have a community around you?
Yeah, I love that you caught on to that because that was very intentional. For us, when we move out of a comfortable situation into an uncertain situation, one of the things, it's the responsibility of the community is to welcome. We always say, we welcome you with open arms. And so in this book and in this project, one of the details specifically is that no matter where Darren went, whether it was the barbershop, whether it was to eat, whether it was school, whether it was basketball, whether it was the sporting store. There's so many opportunities that all of us have that are a part of the community, that built a community, that are still building a community, is to welcome people with open arms and to say, hey, regardless of where you are from or regardless of where you used to live, this is where you live now, and we see you as family. So we're going to welcome you into behind the closed doors, behind the curtain. We're going to show you how we do, regardless of if you've been here for a decade or if you've been here for a day. And so it was important for us to show that every single community, they have mentors and mentees. So I wanted to give the mentors the opportunity to say, hey, you need to have that positive word for that youngster or for that new family, that young dad, that young mother, that new person that shows up at your job. Show them what you're all about. Don't expect for people to come in and just assume that they know the culture, that they assume that they know what's normally done in the way that it's done. You got to show them. And so what does that take? It takes time. It takes intentionality. And it takes what was given to you. Now it's your obligation to give it and pass it and pay it forward.
And an assumption that I made as I read the book was he transitioned from, I think, a fairly diverse situation into a community that everybody looked like him and everybody dressed like him and all that. But his perception of things had been shaped already because of his previous high school experience. His English teacher, I thought, was so key to reframing his perspective. Can you share with us about the importance of unlearning to learn?
Yeah, life is the greatest teacher of all. And so life gives us exactly what we need. And so in certain situations, in certain moments inside the book, Darren didn't even know how much depth he had. Darren didn't even know how far he could possibly dig because things had been given to him on a silver platter previously. He had been given convenience. He had been given comfort. He had been kind of isolated in just thinking that the bubble that he lived in was the entire world. And unfortunately, and fortunately, he had grown up through some of his, young adolescent years and thinking that what he had gone through was actually the hardest. And even though he went to the other side of town and experienced adversity, that he thought, because I never faced this before, I should quit. I should give up. This isn't for me. And so just like you had mentioned, his teacher was there to show him and the rest of the students, the perspective is the most powerful tool that we have because it can either be your prison or it can be your passport. And so when he first got there, his perspective was it was his prison because this was the hardest thing he'd ever gone and done. We find so many different comforts in what we do that we neglect to develop who we are. And so he had developed his game on the court. He was a basketball player. And when he develops his game, he neglects who he is, the person. And so his English teacher in high school comes to develop the person that he is, which then shapes the perspective he has. And that's what gives him the extra gears that he didn't know was accessible to him before, because he had come and now identified, this is who I am. And who I am is a much greater and more powerful person than the basketball player that I am. And so he was able to see outside of the lines, outside of the jersey, and ultimately outside of his circumstance, that he could use those circumstances for the power that he had.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're talking about identity in basketball. I was recently talking to someone who grew up as a really good basketball player and ended up getting hurt his senior year and paralyzed and then unparalyzed and all these things. And he discovered that his identity was not basketball. His identity was not hidden in the game of basketball. It was somewhere else. And Darren found that too. As you read this book, Darren is the centerpiece of the book, but his family each was impacted differently by his new situation. He was a mentor to his little brother that he had no idea that his little brother was looking up to him. That in and of itself is a message. And his mother was persistent in providing him encouraging notes everywhere. Can you talk about how a person's going through something touches other people and just not them alone, and how his situation impacted his family in ways that he had no idea as he was going through it?
Everyone's watching, even though you don't see them. Everybody is watching. In this book, Darren's the older brother, and so his younger sibling was there wanting to grow up and be just like him. And so Darren was unaware, first and foremost, of the fact that how intently his brother watched his every move and how he was his brother's hero. There's several parts in the book where they were talking about a superstar, and Darren's brother was like, I don't know who you're talking about because my superstar lives in my house. My superstar is one bedroom over. And Darren didn't understand the impact of his decisions. And David, just as you and I both know, is that what we're going through most of the time doesn't have anything to do with us. Most of the time, what we're going through has to do with the impact it will have on others based off of how we deal with the situation. And so there's been times where we played on teams and sports teams before, and you talk to teammates or coaches or people who have been a part of the coaching staff years later, and they'll say, do you remember that time when you got in a car accident and you jumped out of the car, and even though it was their fault, and you ran over there to check on the person to see if they were okay? And you're like, no, I don't remember that at all. I remember looking in the glove box for my insurance card to make sure everything was in alignment. Do you remember that time when there was the janitor who would come through every single day and they would sweep up the halls and make sure that we had all of our equipment nice and neat in our locker room? And that time where you left the $20 bill just right outside of the service room? I don't remember that at all. See, there's always somebody watching. And so in this dynamic, the picture that we wanted to paint is that Darren's mom was responsible for his brother being watered. Now, I got to break that down. Darren's mom was responsible for watering Darren day in and day out so that his brother would reap the benefits of Darren's overflow. So Darren, I'm going to keep impacting you because I know that my impact is not just for your sake, but it's for the sake of your brother. And so that's one of the greatest things about leadership is that leaders see everything that's happening, even though we sometimes might not see what's going on, because they can see the entire picture. Mom sees the entire picture of the impact that Darren has on his brother. Darren doesn't see it, but mom's like, I'm going to keep impacting you because I know I'm going to fill you up so much, this overflow is going to spill out on your brother. And so there's a couple of parts in the book where Darren just naturally takes a leadership role as opposed to somebody who's playing first person and feeling like the circumstances are dumping down on him.
Everything didn't go right for Darren. You do the best you can, and you come in second place. He came in second place in an area that he didn't even know he had that kind of gift in.
Yeah.
There's a poem in this book that he's responsible for writing that is just amazing, that the teacher had put in a contest for him. And of course, I'm reading, I'm like, I know he's going to win that. He's going to get that. Same thing with basketball. Someone gets injured, he steps into a starting role, he's flourishing, and he gets hurt in a late season, and they don't win the championship. I talk about counting all the wins along the way.
Yeah.
Just keep counting the wins. How do you handle that now when you wanted to get first place? Man, you get second. You wanted to get to the playoffs. You get hurt. Talk about how you manage those areas of disappointment. I don't call them failures because I don't think they are, but areas of disappointment where You did everything you know how to do. You did the right things, and it just didn't quite work out.
Your best might not be the best, but it's your best. There's so many times that we have come up against circumstances where we showed up for that interview. We were dressed as best as possible. We were on our game. We researched the company and we showed up. We hand in our resume. We have an interview and you leave it and you call whoever you on the other end of that phone. You say, I killed it. Oh, I got that job. And all of a sudden, either you get that phone call back and people say, sorry, but we're going to go in a different direction. Or they don't call you back at all. You're like, I know I killed it. It could be the same thing you play in sports. You're trying out for the team and you've been working all off season on that weakness of yours. Oh, I'm going to make the team this year. And coach and your team may say, hey, you've been working. They even recognize you. They even acknowledge the hard work that you put in. And coach will put up his list at the end of the tryouts and you go all the way down and you don't see your name. So you go down it again for the second time and everybody comes and they pat you on the back like, hey, man, that's tough. The thing right there is that you have to understand, David, is that when you give your best might not be the best, but your best this time is better than you've ever done before. And in that moment where he writes a poem and he doesn't get first place, he understands that he just was given a gift. His teacher just found out and pointed out to him, look, I'm going to uncover a gift that you can have for the rest of your life, regardless of what your passion of playing basketball, what you feel like your assignment is here on earth, whether that stops early or not. This gift is going to take you so much further. And so it's not about him identifying being the best and winning this championship or winning this tournament or winning this contest. The win there was a gift that was unveiled and uncovered. And so many times people need to understand is that I wouldn't even have gotten here had I not tried my best. And even though this situation isn't for me or I'm not for this situation, I'm better off because of it. I remember a couple of years ago, I put my name in for a speaking engagement. It was this big, giant speaking engagement. And I got on the call and they were saying, okay, give us your best pitch. And I start talking and I'm seeing their head nods like this and they're smiling. They're giving me the body language. And I get off that interview and I go, oh, they're going to hire me for the job. 2 weeks later, I get an email saying, Thomas, we've decided to go in another direction. Now, David, here's what I learned in that moment is that opportunity might not have been for me, but what I was just given was a gift that when you get on the call with somebody about a speaking engagement, have your stuff together, have your stories just tight, get excited, almost give them a preview of what the audience is going to get long before you ever take that stage. And so that moment wasn't about me getting or not getting the speaking engagement. That moment was about me seeing what was in me and coming prepared to the next opportunity. And so what people need to gain from this is that there's going to be another opportunity. The bus is coming in 15 minutes. There's going to be another one. You miss this one. You might be late to where you're going, but they still have transportation going in that direction. And so for the listeners out there, understanding that you might have got second, third, or fifth place, but here's the thing, you're going to get another opportunity. And what was it that you were able to learn from this opportunity? Because this opportunity prepared you for the next opportunity.
In trading, one of my mentors always says to me, Cooks, there's always another trade. You're going to lose money. You're not going to win and make money every single time. Over the long haul, that's the goal. But part of your process, part of your preparation, part of your learning is that you're going to have some bad trades. It doesn't make you a bad trader because there's always another trade. I wanted to talk a little bit about how he developed some really close friends at school. Those friends that he became close to were also children of parents who embraced him and sold into him. He could have responded to the antagonism, but his performance on and off the court as a person, as a student, as an athlete, changed everything for him because he was on his game, all of his game, not just, I'm not talking about basketball, but there's other things that were so attractive to other people. All of a sudden, the antagonists, you could not hear them much anymore because he had moved on and was embraced by the right people.
We have a saying on our Jon Gordon team is that sometimes your job is to be the star of a team. Sometimes your job is to support the star, but the team is always the star. And what I think the valuable lesson that Darren pointed to and that he epitomized was it's not about him. And so when you come into a situation, you don't always have to do something to be approved. Sometimes you come there and you can listen. Sometimes you come there, you learn. Sometimes you come and serve. Sometimes you come and just be a vessel, be a sponge. It's not always just come in and try to outshine, because sometimes when you come and you outshine an old culture too quick, too soon, then some people could get rubbed the wrong way. And then immediately they're going to start to put up barriers and they're going to put up walls. But if you come in like Darren did, come in there humble, being willing to be a backup, but prepare like a starter. Be there to support. Maybe your job is to get your boss in the best tip-top shape. Maybe your job is to get the starters prepared for the game. Maybe your job is to be a listening and a sounding board for the coach. Take your job serious and don't always think that your performance is the only production that you can have. Because Darren did that, he had several other confidants on the team who had been there for years. And they're the ones that stuck up for him. They stuck up for him. And sometimes when you get the old heads, as they say, or the OGs to speak and vouch for you, then you don't have to say anything. When you come into a situation in a culture that's already been created, allow the culture to do what it has been doing, and you bring yourself to the culture.
I think the greatest gift is the ability to influence, because influence changes everything. It changes the atmosphere. It changes people's perception. It changes people's willingness to do something on your behalf. As you said, Darren was doing so many things for other people that he wasn't even recognizing. And that's the beauty of this story, is that he was impacting other people's lives while he was trying to figure out a way to fit in. He was just trying to fit in. He didn't want to cause any trouble. The word that you use that I think is so important is humility. He entered into the situation and he was humble about it. He put aside all of his former success, all that he brought to the table. He pushed that off the table and he sat down and ate what was before him. And he found out it was a pretty good meal. We talk about three things here on our journey from paralysis to purpose, and that's perspective, perseverance, and partnerships. We've talked about that a ton today.
Yeah.
And I am convinced that those three pillars are consistent in everyone's journey. I haven't come across anyone where these things have failed you as part of your process. So when you hear the word perspective, what comes to mind to you?
First and foremost is how we see the world determines the world that we see. So if you wake up and you only think that everything is against you or everyone is against you, where I have opposition, then you are going to run into opposition. But if you wake up every single day and you see that every circumstance, situation is opportunity, then that's exactly what you're going to find. That's exactly what you're going to have. And that's exactly what you're going to become. So that's how I think about the word perspective.
Perseverance.
The strength that you judge yourself on is old strength and not the new. I was recently in Peru when I was doing some rock climbing, and I had to climb to a different pillar on this mountain. And I thought after I finally made it, I'm hanging there by one arm, then I get my other arm up there, then I get a chance to use my legs, and I'm just, I'm humping it. And I get to the part where you get to take a break and just get some water, maybe have a snack. And I'm thinking I made it. And I look up and there's more to go. And I was thinking to myself, there's no way I could do this. 30 minutes later, I hit the top of the mountain. My perseverance in that moment told me that. You don't even know how much strength you have inside of you. The strength that you judge yourself on is old strength, not new.
Partnerships.
A bridge to where you want to go.
Mm.
Every single one of us has a destination. And then we can only go so far and so fast on our own. But when we do get the partnerships, you're helping them, they're helping you. You get there along a lot faster. I think the season of life, David, is about the partnerships. And I see partnerships in alignment with playing Super Mario Kart. When you're doing it on your own, you're just driving as fast as your car goes. But when you're doing it together, you're hitting those green arrows and it's zooming you. It's zoom, zoom, zoom. I mean, you're almost force multiplication. You're utilizing their power, their force, their strength, their speed, and they're doing the same thing to you. So if you and I both give 100% right now, what's the percentage that we have? We have 200%. And if you get three people and everybody's given everything they got, now you got 300%.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can look at opportunities as partnerships, then we'll see a lot more opportunities. But because a lot of people see opportunities as obstacles and oppositions, partnerships as oppositions, then we'll continue to play musical chairs. There's 10 of us and only 9 chairs.
Yeah, nothing, anything that has been great accomplished in this world has always involved partnerships.
Yeah.
I mean, period. You know, so I couldn't have a podcast without you being on it.
Partnerships.
It's just, it doesn't work that way. I could, I guess, have a monologue, I guess, but it wouldn't be the podcast I would like to have. So, hey, if people are interested in following you and getting in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Man, the easiest way is go to the website, thomasrwilliams.com. You can find the books on Amazon as well as the website to give you more description. And hit me back with thoughts, comments, remarks, man. I definitely want to hear from people how this book has impacted their lives and which part of the characters did they resonate with most.
Well, let me tell you, I encourage you all to go out and get his book. It's called Dig, D-I-G. All right. Thomas R. Williams, forward by Jon Gordon. And I just think it's a great read. It's a great book. I think it's probably as good as my book.
Yeah, buddy.
Let's see if we can say that. Sometimes you got to have some fun too.
You have to.
You have to. And so go out and get it. I think you will definitely find it to be encouraging, inspiring. It's a lot of different things in there. It has challenged me as I talked to Thomas today. I've got a couple of books that I need to get done. And now I've got to think about the way I want to write them, the way I want to get the message to the people. And I never thought that as part of me reading the book until I started talking to him. So there's more than one way, I guess is probably my message. There's more than one way to get the job done. And just be open to those things. So Thomas, you were great again. Man, I look forward to maybe the next time we do this, and maybe another 3 years. I know you got some other books and stuff in the works, and as you become, as you grow as a father and a parent and a husband and all that, you're going to have a bunch of stuff to say. So you young guys. Well, until next time, on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, this is David Cooks reminding you that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
I was surprised at first the amount of pushback I was getting from our own people about, like, we don't do that. Who do you think you are? What do you think you're a white boy? I'd be called the N-word. People would tell me to go eat bananas. They would tell me the basketball courts over there were actually shooting hoops.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
But most of the time, it would be good experiences. The world becomes a really small place when everything offends you all the time. That becomes tough.
Paralysis to purpose.